Hello，你好，欢迎回来，Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on November 30, 2022. Before we start today's episode, I'll have two little announcements. One is, yes, I am feeling better, although I still tend to feel a little bit of a croakiness in my throat. So, excuse me if during this episode I may have to pause the video so I can clear my throat and pop in another cough candy. Number two, the second announcement. This is well, I would say this is a biggie, but I guess to some of you it might not matter as much. Johnny Tiger is now available on Instagram and Twitter. So if you guys want to interact with me more, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. And luckily, both will have the same username. It's at Johnny Tiger, all one word, at Johnny Tiger 1981. At Johnny Tiger 1981 on Twitter and on Instagram. You'll be able to find me there, and I'll be posting uh, photos, pictures, and little tidbits. I'll try to keep this up. I am usually not very good at keeping up with my social media obligations, but I will try to keep things relatively interesting. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about a little lesser known god, or a group of gods, actually, because it's more than one. A group of gods and goddesses that is lesser known but very, very important to mortals, to common peoples in the Chinese religion. Which Chinese religion, you may ask? Is it Buddhism or is it Taoism? This is a little bit hard to say. I imagine this is a little bit closer to Taoism, but one of the greatest thing I have always found about Chinese culture is how throughout history the three systems of belief, the Taoism, the Confucianism, and the Buddhism, these three schools of belief in Chinese history have always been very inclusive. They always try to encompass each other. In that, so when Buddhism first came to China during the Tang Dynasty, of course, Taoism was already well established in China. So Chinese people believe in the Jade Emperor, uh, the uh, various gods and goddesses up there in the heavenly court. Um, and then when Buddhism came in, of course, those of you that know Buddhism is completely different. There's no heavenly court. There's no hierarchy or no kings or lords and all that stuff. It's just the Lord Buddha sitting up there in his palace, teaching, uh, passing wisdom down onto the world. And there's a lot of disciples and lesser Buddha that go around and try to bring these teachings to the people. So in one way, Taoism look like government, and Buddhism look like a university. So when Buddhism came into China, the Buddhists they didn't come up and say, "Well, you guys have been doing this wrong. There's no Jade Emperor. There's no heavenly soldiers. There's no imperial soldiers in the heaven and all that stuff." They didn't do that. They basically said, well, yeah, the Jade Emperor is there. Buddha just like have his own place, and they both exist, and they work together. Buddha takes care of teaching people, and Jade Emperor takes care of governing people. That's all. So neither side is right or wrong. And in return, Taoism didn't try to tell people, no, there's no Buddha, it's just the Jade Emperor. No, Taoism incorporated Buddhist into their belief system as well. And say, yeah, Buddha is different kind of God, and they live in a different part of heaven, but they're there, and they don't take part in the heavenly politic. They take part in studying and uh, developing more wisdom and knowledge. I thought that was like one of the greatest thing of one of the greatest example of how religion don't have to be right or wrong. Everybody can be right. Everybody can be happy together. Uh, so that I mean I'm digressing a little bit here, uh, because this is not really the main topic of the day. But I just want to sort of emphasize on that. If you think back throughout human history, this is very, very rare. You don't hear about too many other countries, other cultures, other religions that can have this amount of tolerance for other belief. Like, you know, when uh, um, Catholicism or Christian belief came into Europe, out went paganism, out went the Zeus and Athena and Apollo, and they went away. They got replaced, and now it's only okay. There's only one God, and all the others are fake. That's basically what the Christian or Catholic Church tells people, that if you believe in anything else other than the one true God, then uh, you're wrong. You're misguided. Well, back in the old day, you are evil. You're working for the devil, and they kill you. But nowadays, they just tell you you're misguided. And back during the even during the time of the uh, Greco belief, uh, no, we look at Zeus and Athena and Apollo and those Greek gods. Same thing, they replaced the Egyptian god and all that came before them. So a lot of the other religion is like my way or no way. It's either my way or the highway. Uh, but in China, Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism actually found a way to coexist. You're right, I'm right, everybody's right. We're just focusing on different things. And I thought that was really, really wonderful. So this group of God I'm going to talk about today, you can still see temples or little chapels or shrines for them all over China, all over Taiwan. They are very small. They're usually uh, kind of simple, just a shack or a hut with a statue in there that you can go and worship. And if you've been studying up on your Chinese culture, then you already know I'm talking about 土地公. 土地公, Tudegong, 土地公. 土地公 roughly translates as grandfathers of the earth, and no, that's it, grandfathers. Grandfathers because there's more than one. And 土地公, unlike many other gods, is not one person, but it's a title. Um, Sort of like the Dragon King. When Chinese people talk about Long Wang, the Dragon King is not one dragon. That is the Dragon King. There's one Dragon King for each ocean. So there's one for the Pacific, one for the Atlantic, and one for the China Sea. There's even Dragon King for each river, each stream, and even if you have a well in your yard, and if that well is old enough and has water in it, it's probably a dragon king for that particular well. Although it would be a very small dragon, but it's still so there's a dragon king for every uh, body of water. The dragon king is a group of gods, a group of dragon gods. Same with 土地公, the grandfathers of the earth. It's a bunch of very, very minor deities that take care of every body of land. So traditionally, every village, every town, every city would have their own 土地公, or their own grandfather of the earth. Now, don't get 土地公 confused with Mother Earth, because I think some people in your head you're thinking, oh, that's just like Mother Earth. No, Mother Earth is very, very high up on the hierarchy in in the deity. So um, most of the time when we talk about Mother Earth, we're thinking about Gaia, Gaia, the Earth Mother from Greek mythology. Now Gaia is like Zeus's mom, I believe, if I remember my Greek mythology correctly. That's Zeus's mom. That is the mother of the Lord of God. Uh, and even if we talk about Mother Earth in the most pagan sense, it's Mother Earth is that one power that governs everything Earth related. Uh, so Mother Earth, in most people's conception, in people's mind, is very powerful, very mighty, very high up on the totem. 土地公 unfortunately is the other extreme. Uh, the grandfathers of the earth, in many ways, are the most low end of godhood in Chinese religions. You can think of them as the custodian, the janitor, the garbage man, the people, the god that are so low on the totem that every other god, not just God, every other god, goddesses, demons, ghosts, evil spirit can pick on them, and 土地公 usually can't do anything about it. Like most of the 土地公, they are so low on the totem, their power is so limited that even if there's a vampire, okay, there's no actual vampire in Chinese mythology, but there are things that similar to the vampire. You know, some crazy monsters like that. 土地公 can't deal with them. 土地公 have to go up to the heavenly court and ask the Jade Emperor to send reinforcement. This is why I said don't get 土地公 confused with Earth Mother, because on the power level, Earth Mother is way up there and 土地公 is way down here. So why are the grandfathers of the Earth, why are 土地公 so uh, beloved by mortal? Why are they um, everywhere? Why is there like their chapel, their monastery everywhere? If they are so low on power, if they're so weak, because because they are the one God that is the closest to mortal daily lives. The Jade Emperor and the other gods, other goddesses, they are up there in heaven. They don't know what mortals are going through. They don't know the pain, the suffering that mortals are going through. But to Digong, they are here. They're right here on this earth with us. They feel everything that their people feel. They see everything that is there to see. So, in a sense, if you pray to 土地公, there's a much higher chance of your prayer getting answered, or 土地公 will try to do something about it, than if you say pray to the Jade Emperor or if you pray to Buddha, because the Jade Emperor is way up there. He doesn't really deal with mortal affairs, and Buddha, well, there's only so many Buddha. Like there's only I believe one Lord Buddha, and there's like uh 18 minor Buddhas. So altogether, there's 19 of them. They can't deal with everybody at the same time. Uh, they are not that powerful. Also, Buddhas are not supposed to actually take a direct hand in helping mortal. They are here to teach us. I mean, we are going into really deep Buddhism territory here, but most people who pray to Buddha to help them solve problem have this mistaken idea that Buddha is here to end your suffering. No, that's not what a Buddha is for. A Buddha is here to teach you how to suffer in style. A Buddha is here to teach you how to earn some good karma so you don't suffer in your next life. A Buddha is not here to end your suffering. That's not what I'm here to do. So praying to Buddha, praying to Jade Emperor, praying to Mother Earth, praying to all the other mighty gods, you will get results sometime, but a lot of the time you will not get a result because either it's not something that they do, or they don't have time to get around to dealing with your problem. But 土地公 is different because every 土地公 is tasked, is bound to a certain part, a piece of land, which, like I said, every village has one 土地公, every town has one 土地公, uh, uh, every community have one 土地公. So the 土地公, there's a lot of them. They can get things done a lot quicker because their workload is a lot less than the other god. And because they themselves don't have all the godly powers and magic and might the other gods have, they also understand more about mortal pains and limitations and grief and all that stuff. Uh, Let me give you guys an example of how limited a 土地公's power is. While most of the gods and Buddha are immortal, like they'll never die, they live forever. The only way for them to die is either they do something wrong and get their power removed from them, or they get killed by a more powerful being in some battle or something like that. Uh, but that is not the case for 土地公. Okay, 土地公 can only live 3,000 years. Yeah, to us that still sounds like immortality. Like what the heck, 3,000 years? That's a long time. But when you compare that to other gods, that's nothing. 3,000 years to other god is like 2 years. Um, so the only way for 土地公 to continue living is if they are rewarded by the Jade Emperor. So every 2,000 years, 2,500 years, all the 土地公 have to go to heaven and attend this big party. They call it a party, but really this is more like imagine you have to renew your driver's license. Right? It's more like okay, your immortality, your lifespan is going to end very soon. So get your butt up to heaven so we can see if we need to renew your license so you can do another 3,000 years. Um, so if a 土地公 has done a lot of good for people in his term, and people really loved him and really worship him, then there's a big possibility that um, the Jade Emperor will give him a peach. Yeah, a peach. But this is not just any, like, just not a peach you get from the supermarket. This is a peach that only can grow in heaven. And this is a peach that when you eat it, you get another 3,000 years. Okay, so if you get it, great. Now you're 土地公 for another 3,000 years. If you don't, then sorry, you're going to die. You're bye bye. You go bye bye. So that is how weak a 土地公 is. They are not even at the same immortality level as other gods. They have to keep renewing their godhood by doing good. Now, what happens if they die when they don't get renewed? Well, someone else in that piece of land that used to be belong to this 土地公 will get selected and turn into the new 土地公. So, how did the 土地公 get started? Well, this is a very, very hard question because there's so many of them. And so you can't say, okay, this is the origin of 土地公 because we don't know. We don't really know which one started first. But as far as something that most of the scholars can agree on. The first 土地公 is a guy by the name of Zhang Fuji, uh, from the Shang dynasty in China. So we are going back to about 4,000 years ago, and during the Shang dynasty, there was a large city. In this city, the emperor of Shang have appointed a tax collector, and this tax collector's name was Zhang Fuji. Now, unlike today, today most of the taxes that we pay are predetermined. So if the government say everybody have to pay 10% every year, so everybody have to pay 10%. It's very even nowadays. Back then, it's different. Back then, uh, tax collectors, it's their duty to come up with a number, how much they are going to collect from the towns they're in charge of. And that money go towards the government, go towards the imperial court. In which this is to say tax collectors had immense amount of power. Can you imagine if you end up with a tax collector that decide 50% of everything have to go to the government? Yeah, they actually could do that. So tax collectors had a lot of power back then, but it was a very difficult job. It's a very difficult job because if you collect too much, people hate you. If you collect too little, the emperor hates you. And if the emperor hates you, that's a bad thing because the emperor usually will chop off your head and put someone else in your position. Yang Fuji was such a good tax collector that he managed to serve that same post for over 50 years before he died. He made money for the government, but he did it in a way that he didn't put too much pressure on the people. He even come out of his own pocket sometimes when some people couldn't afford the tax that he set for them. Everybody loved him. After he died, it was said that because people loved him so much that they wanted to wait for a few days before burying him. They wanted people to be able to come and pay respect in front of his coffin. And it was said that for some strange reason, that even a week after he died, Zhang Fuji still looked like when he was alive. He still looked healthy. His skin tone looked great. His body looked nice and supple. He didn't look like a dead person. He just looked like someone who was sleeping. And then uh, someone started telling stories of there were poor people, homeless people in town that really missed Zhang Fuji. So they started putting a drawing, a picture, obviously not photograph, but a drawn picture of him by their pillow when they went to bed, just so they could remember him. And every day they woke up, if they needed food, they would find food. If they needed money, they would find money. Not a lot, not enough to make them millionaire, but they didn't have to starve. They didn't have to go hungry. They didn't have to suffer in the cold weather. If they wanted clothes, they got clothes. And this suddenly went all over town, so everybody started worshiping the portrait of Zhang Fuji. And gradually, the story got to the emperor, and the emperor said, "Okay, we're going to make Zhang Fuji the grandfather of this town." And so this was, as far as many scholars concerned, the first 土地公, the first grandfather of the earth. Throughout history, 土地公 have always been said to be the one person who benefit his community the most. So usually the idea is if you do a lot of good for your community, if enough people love you in the community, then after you die, you are offered the position of being this area's 土地公, so you can continue to look after your people. Now, so far, I have keep mentioning 土地公 as the grandfather of the earth, but that is not always the case. 土地公 is not a patriarchal post. In fact, there's actually a 土地公 and a 土地奶奶, meaning grandfather of the earth and grandmother of the earth. So it's supposed to be a couple, but sometimes, sometimes the person selected is not married. So sometimes you end up with just a 土地公, or sometimes you end up with just a 土地奶奶. They are usually portrayed as an old man, a tiny little old man, maybe 4 feet tall, really, really cute old guy, with a walking cane in his hand, and he's uh, that's what he looked like. And 土地奶奶, the grandmother of the earth, is a tiny little old lady with a walking cane. Sometimes, rather than walking cane, she can be portrayed sitting on a tree stump, knitting a sweater, or doing some other grandmotherly things. When you go to Taiwan, you will find that majority of Taiwanese worship 土地奶奶, the grandmother of the earth. The time is now 4 p.m. While most people in China actually worship grandfather of the earth, the 土地公. Now this is a very interesting one, and it does have a interesting story behind it that I'm going to tell you. We have to go all the way back to the story of 孟姜女, the aka the story of Jenny and Sean, as the way I've always told this, because if I have to keep saying the Chinese name, it's really difficult to tell the story. So the story of 孟姜女, or Jenny and Sean, is the story of the lady who cried so much that she knocked down the Great Wall. If you guys remember, we talked about this story a couple of episodes ago with regarding to uh, the the soup that you drink so after you die, so you don't remember your past life, and you can start with a clean slate. We mentioned the story of Jenny and Sean in that episode as well, and of course, in the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast, which is the best podcast in the world, just for your information. I talked about the original story where Jenny uh, uh, cried for her lover and the Great Wall fell. So I'm not going to go into all the details again. So let's just refresh our memory. So back during the Qing Dynasty, the uh, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he wanted to build, sorry, the Great Wall. So he started drafting laborers and slaves from the civilians. Uh, every household, every man past the age of 14 have to go and work on the construction for years. I can't remember it was 5 years or 6 years, something like that, uh, before they were allowed to go home. And if you disobey, then you will get put to the death. Uh, so Jenny and Sean were young lovers that just got married when the soldiers came to their house and arrested Sean and dragged him away in chain and took him to the construction site to build a Great Wall. Now, when I talk about construction site, I'm not talking about like, okay, you live uh, in in uh, in this town, and then you get taken away to like construction site that 2 hours away uh, from where you live, and so you can still come home on the weekend. No, when we talk about construction site for the Great Wall, a lot of times you are taken away to some places 100 miles away, and you have no idea where you are going. You have no, and your family have no idea where you got taken off to. Um, so long story short, uh, Sean found a way to write letters to Jenny while he's working at the construction site. But years after years, finally one day the letters stopped coming, and Jenny found out that Sean had died uh, during the construction. So Jenny went to the section of the wall that Sean was working on, traveling for months and months on her own to get there, and then they told her, "Oh, well, we're sorry, we don't know where his body is because anyone who died during the construction, we just bury them under the wall, and we build a wall over their body." So devastated, Jenny sat down at the foot of the wall and started crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. Says it's driving you nuts, and crying and crying and crying. And finally, she cried so much that the Jade Emperor up there in heaven is trying to do his paperwork. He's sitting at his desk and he's getting distracted. What in the world is that noise? And so the Jade Emperor told his servant, "Go down to the mortal world and see what is that caterwauling going on." The servant came back on, "Oh, there's this girl that her lover died, and she can't find his body because they buried him under the Great Wall, and so she's sitting there crying and crying and crying." And stop that, the Jade Emperor said. Uh, Okay, if if that's the problem, go down there and knock the wall down so she can find the body, for crying out loud. So I can get back to work. So the servant uh, went down to the mortal world and punched the great wall and knocked it down, and exposed all the dead bodies that were buried underneath. So that was the story of how Jenny, Meng Jiangnu, uh, her love and grief was so powerful that it reached the heaven and knocked down the Great Wall. That's the original story. Now, what happened after you knocked down the Great Wall? There's thousands of skeletons under there. And obviously, she had no way to know which set of bones belonged to her beloved Sean. So she started digging through the skeletons with her bare hand and trying to find some traces of her lover. She dug through those bones and rock and dirt with her hand, and her fingernails broke, her hand tore, and she started bleeding, but she kept digging and digging and digging, and her blood seeped into the bones and the soil and the rock, and suddenly she saw that on one set of bones her blood fell upon them, and cherry blossoms started growing inside the skeleton rather than the blood being just soaking into the dirt. And that was a sign from the heaven. This set of bones must belong to her beloved Sean. So Jenny put the set of bones inside a big uh, sack, and she carried it in her arms and started walking home. I told you guys before, Chinese people to be able to be buried with your ancestor is a really, really big deal. So she had to take him home. She couldn't just leave him there. As she walked, she kept weeping, she kept crying, and her tears kept falling on the sack and soaking through the sack and into the skeleton inside. And suddenly, Jenny started to feel something was not right. She felt that the sack was getting heavier and heavier as she was walking, and there were strange noises coming out from inside the sack, and things seemed to be shifting around inside the sack, almost like the bones were trying to rearrange themselves. Yeah, I know, they were getting a little scary, isn't it? The sack kept getting heavier and heavier, and Jenny felt that she couldn't walk another step. Suddenly, an old woman appeared beside her, and the old woman said to her, "My dear, you are being really silly. You need to carry that sack on your back. When you carry it in your arms are doing all the work. So obviously, you're getting tired. That's why it's feeling heavier, heavier and heavier. If you carry it on your back, it will be a lot easier." So Jenny shifted the sack onto her back and kept on walking. And true to the old woman's word, that the sack wasn't growing heavier anymore. In fact, it grew lighter. Went back to the feeling as light as when she first picked up those bones. After Jenny walked away, carrying the sack of bones on her back, an old man appeared beside the old lady, and he said to her, he said, "You are a very cruel old bitch." Excuse my French, but that's the exact original phrase. "You are a cruel, really cruel old bitch." The old woman turned and glared at him, and she said, "What? What? Why you say that?" And the old man said, "You know it, and I know it, that if she kept on carrying the sack in her arm, her tears would keep falling on those bones, and because she loved the guy so much, that if she kept it up for another few hours, her tears would rejuvenate her lover. Her lover would be resurrected. Why did you stop that? Why did you make her carry the sack on her back? Now all she's going to get is a skeleton. She's not going to get her lover back." The old lady said, "To Li Gong, our grandfather of the earth, you and I, we both know that our duty is bound to the land. And part of our duty is when there are spirit, unrest spirit, wandering spirit, lost spirit, we direct them on to the next life, to the underworld, so they can reincarnate. It is not in our job description to let them go back, return to life. If we start breaking the rule, if we start allowing this to happen, then people is going to pray to us to do that for them all the time. Whenever someone dies, people is going to want us to help them get their lover or father or mother or brother or sister back. You can't do that. You can't allow Jenny to break the rule like that." As they argue, the two elderly, who by now you know is the 土地公 and 土地奶奶, grandfather of the earth and grandmother of the earth. As they walked and argued, the grandfather of the earth said, "You are heartless. You're cruel. You're just a stickler to the rule. Why do you have to play it by the book? It could have been a romantic, very romantic ending." And grandmother of the earth said, "You are an old fool. You can't break the rule whenever you feel like it, no matter how romantic it is." So they walked, they argued, they walked, they argued. It got more and more heated until they finally stopped at the edge of the ocean. They stopped on the beach. And at this time, they're so mad at each other that the grandmother of the earth, 土地奶奶, finally said, "Okay, you know what? That's it. That's it. Obviously, you and I, we can't work together. Obviously, we can't even live together because you seem to think that I am not romantic. You seem to think that you can change the rule for mortals whenever you feel like it. Obviously, we are not meant to be together. So, you know what? I'm out of here." So she reached out to her head and pulled out her hair pick. And with that hair pick, she slashed she slashed the hair pick down at the ground at her feet, almost like she's using a sword. So great was her rage and anger at that point that that little motion of cutting down at the earth with her hairpick split the section of beach away from the mainland. The last thing Tudigong saw of Tudinanai was her standing on that tiny piece of land that split away from the mainland as she drifted away. And that little piece of land, my friend, later became what we know as Taiwan now. So this is why people in Taiwan worship Tudinanai more than Tudigong. It's because she was, as far as this story goes, she was god, or she was the goddess that gave birth to Taiwan when she was leaving Tudigong behind. Whether you believe in Tudigong and Tudinanai or not, or maybe you only believe in one of them, I think is a very interesting phenomenon and culture for my people because, like I said, everywhere you go in Taiwan and China, you still see their chapel. People still worship them, and they are very earthy, very down to earth deities that people trust and pray to every day. Thank you for checking out today's Wisdom Wednesday. We'll be back again tomorrow for some Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。